Its nickname was the Dixie Line, and it ran east and west through Jackson.
It was the NC and St. L, that's Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis Depot. Now, in about the late 1800s, the L&N actually purchased about 75% of the NC St. L stock run by the L&N Railroad. But they had to run it as separate companies because the government wouldn't let them merge. This train here went from east to west, where other trains that came through town went to north to south. So if you were going to Memphis or Nashville, Chattanooga, this would be the railroad that you left on.
Just south of downtown Jackson on Royal Street is the renovated NC and STL Depot and Railroad Museum. Originally built in 1907, the depot handled traffic until 1958, when the last night train went through town.
We renovated in honor of all the veterans because all the veterans going to World War II left from this depot. There's a picture in here showing them marching down Royal Street, which is right in front of us, and they came in the front door, went out the back door, hopped on the train and off the boot camp, and where they went.
Jackson was a railroad town. It was home to Casey Jones and many other railroading luminaries. Jackson
had three major railroads: the NC and St. L, Nashville, Chattanooga, St. Louis, the IC, Illinois Central, and the Gulf, Mobile, and Ohio, GM&O. And we show local history of these three railroads that worked in Jackson. If you are from Jackson, your family goes way back in Jackson, chances are somebody in your family worked for the railroad because this was a big railroad town. In the 50s, there were 5 railroad presidents that lived in Jackson, Tennessee.
The scrappy little Dixie Line had a long and storied history, and thanks to Isaac Tigert, it was the only railroad that made money during the Depression.
He took a almost bankrupt railroad and turned it into a very wealthy small railroad. Isaac Tigert, who founded the GM&O Railroad, was from Jackson. And this is where he was based from. They had the Islam shop here, which they brought a steam engine in, and it had a good boiler. They were able to build it from the ground up. The Islam shop was a very big shop, employed a lot of craftsmen. There were all kind of craftsmen. But Isaac Tigert was a smart businessman. He was the first to have hostess on the trains. He also had a bus line that followed his rail line, that if you got off here and needed to go to the next county, the bus was here with the train and it would take you to the next county.
In its heyday, the depot was an important gathering spot. Andrew Jackson and Bull Moose candidate Theodore Roosevelt gave speeches here. The Summers brothers opened Hub City Bottling Works across the street, and Memphis-bound circuses and carnivals stopped and performed in the park nearby. The depot even doubled once as a wedding chapel.
The depot was a big hangout. Back in the 30s and 20s, they didn't have the TV. People came to the depot just to see who got on and off the train. And of course, at the same time back then, there was a park beside the depot where Jackson had a zoo, a pond with paddle boats. Of course, the trolley stopped here. So there's pictures here where there's hundreds of people packed around the depot on Sunday afternoon just to come and see who got off and on the train. So that was kind of a Sunday afternoon excitement thing. You come see who got on off the train, you go over and have your picnic at the park and look at the zoo, and it was a big thing to do. Johnny Popcorn was here. They didn't have the McDonald's and the Burger Kings and stuff back then. You had to go find these little places that sold the snow cones and the popcorn and the peanuts, and this is where everybody in town came. Everybody that comes in, the grandparents and all, says, I remember Johnny Popcorn because that's where we came and got our peanuts and candy. So this was a big hangout.
Passengers were carried to Memphis in just over 3 hours on the Jackson Bell. In the 1940s and 50s, the City of Memphis train made the round trip from Memphis to Nashville in a day. All of this history and more is carefully preserved and presented at the depot. There's a train simulator for the engineer and all of us, and a working HO-scale train layout which depicts Jackson in the 1950s, including a scale model of the depot. Behind the depot rests a caboose for exploring, and the dining car that's attached to it can be rented for parties and gatherings. Railroading history in West Tennessee is fascinating. Maybe you remember the banana festivals that were held in Jackson and Fulton, Kentucky. They celebrated the banana train that regularly stopped to unload and re-ice. To learn about Jackson history or to relive some fond memories, the Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis Depot is a great place to visit.